Welcome to Sean's Thoughts, my podcast from a mountaintop. How you doing today? I hope you're feeling as fabulous as I am. Actually, I had a pretty tremendous day and well, it's just hit lunchtime. Actually, I'm not really called too much to eat. I had a cheese sandwich today and I find myself wanting to consume meat products considerably yet less than I ever have in the past. Actually, I had a burger last night and it definitely didn't sit well with me. So it was kind of another a little bit of a wake up call to not only get out of, you know, even occasionally consuming fast food, yet also to kind of stay away from, other people's made food that perhaps the food that I make for myself and my son, and perhaps in the future, some food that, other companions and partners and friends of mine can make for us as we journey off into this new amazing journey that I'm calling, dubbing, saying, crying out loudly, not crying in the sense of boo hoo, but yet screaming from the top of a peak, New Earth. I apologize if that was a little bit loud in your microphone or your speakers, but yeah, I'm getting super excited about everything that I'm experiencing, that I'm sharing with everyone that is, participating, listening, commenting, and, viewing over all the videos and the experiences and the writings and the photography recently. Did you know, and I hope you do, that this morning I published one of my most exciting creations, my co-creations, I'll call it, because yesterday I went on a walk with my sister on the phone and God by my side. And I say that because, I really do, and more so, and I'm essentially not just beginning to understand, like I've understood for a pretty long time. I'm actually gonna, do we got the 3 minutes done yet? I always like to get 3 minutes of whatever view I'm looking in without me stepping into the frame, just in case I'm ever inclined to create a do no thing video with it. So yeah, that's why I haven't stepped into the frame yet. I'm actually standing atop of this mountain peak. It's kind of not necessarily really a mountain peak, but nevertheless, it is it's a peak of a mountain, just a small one. But the rock that it's actually on is a very old rock, and that's super, super cool. And it's covered by moss. I'll give you a short view after before I set the camera down, perhaps, maybe. But before I conclude this podcast, that I'm here to share these amazing thoughts that I've currently labeled premonitions of ad- potential adventure, or premonitions of, oh yeah, that's what it was, premonitions of adventure forthcoming. See, because I, of course, love to reframe everything, and including reframing myself as I do right now. Hi, how you doing? I'm Sean. That's Sean with a W. Although my podcast, plays a pun on the word Sean. So thank you for joining me. I'm going to look over here while you look over here, and, we'll meet somewhere. Anyways, thank you for sharing your time and your attention with me. And I hope that my head's in the frame. Of course, the interesting thing about, concern and worry about things happening is, whatever does happen is kind of perfect the way that it does happen. And, that's one of the things I have come to in my own path, is recognizing that I can trust whatever to happen will happen. See, yesterday when I was talking about how I went for a walk with my sister, talking to her on the phone, and God by my side, is that I took so many amazing pictures. Like, I really love them. And, in essence, that is the most important thing. And yet I chose to share them. And every time I looked at one of the pictures, I was just blown away by, the picture, by the beauty that I had captured, the reflections that I was able to see, the reflections in the rivers and in the lakes, in the pond, or actually, sorry, the rivers and the pond. Yes, there was no lakes, Paul. You never know. Anyways, so I was just blown away by the effortlessness that it essentially required in order to capture that beauty, because I just simply trusted where I was, and in that moment, that was the perfect moment. And so because I saw it as the perfect moment and I felt that it was a perfect moment, it had essentially, for what I required, it was the perfect moment. Yes, I recognize, people can use all those AI tools and they can use, all these different tools overall to change stuff. And I do that sometimes with my own photos. I jazz them up a little bit to meet a narrative of the song for my moving portraits. But yet, those particular photos were just as is. No manipulation, nothing changed, just they were perfect the way they were. And I was so excited how it all kind of just flowed together with Belinda Carlisle's song, Heaven is a Place on Earth, because that is so in tune with how I perceive what's happening in the world. See, I learned from a source that last year, and this is a source with a small s. I learned from a person that last year, or actually, I guess it was almost 2 years ago, that there was a little area in between Iraq and Iran, and it was supposedly, as I understand it, and I say supposedly just because until I go there and see it with my own eyes, I'll keep myself open to possibility. But I was explained that from this area began the spring or respringing of water, and this water was referred to as the living water. Living water to me being more akin to that which we would find in celery juice, for example. Living water that inside within the molecules of the water, or perhaps some part of the water, that there was I don't know really what it was, but that the water itself was somehow more divinely inspired, we'll say, and that this water had resprung from that area that perhaps once was part of that whole idea of Eden, and that this water was re-entering the water table on planet Earth. And it was even said that within 18 months that we would have that water completely within our water table, essentially flowing throughout the rain, throughout the rivers and the lakes, and that, well, that time is now. Like, that time has been for quite a while, perhaps. And I've often mentioned it. And when I look around and I see the green, I see an abundance of green. When I see the moss, I see moss in beautiful abundance. And actually, today it's raining miraculously enough, because as I heard someone in the coffee shops complain this morning about, is that they had assumed, or the newscaster, weatherman, whatever it is, weather woman, had said that they were expecting, hotness and or hot weather. And it was pretty hot the last few days. Like, for the month that we're in, not being in summer, it was pretty hot. And yet they had forecasted more heat to come. And yet yesterday, because, I really, really love rain, I asked for rain. And lo and behold, rain came today. And I'm so blessed to be sitting here with you right now on this mountaintop with little bits of rain, because it was raining a lot harder before I got up here. And with this beautiful, beautiful scene that I'm sitting at here sharing you with, or sharing with you. Yeah. My words don't always come out perfectly, but yet I often try to do my best. And so, yeah, Premonitions of Adventure is forthcoming. I recently did a podcast in which I felt that perhaps that was the goodbye podcast until, next time when we meet again. And I even told my son that I didn't imagine myself doing another podcast shortly after, like anytime soon. And yet here I am 2 days later doing another podcast because, well, I truly, truly felt inspired when I created that short that I made today. It's one of my moving portraits in which, as I said, I took several of my photographs and I put them into a slideshow, and I overlaid the wonderful lyrics or wonderful music of Belinda Carlisle's Heaven on Earth. And, it's a great testament to the idea that heaven is and has perhaps always been around us all throughout our lives. And yet the ones that perhaps limited us were us, not because of us. And I know that all gets a little confusing and, us. But yet I open, or I allow for there being other things, we'll say, or forces is a really good word, that perhaps did their best job to limit us. But yet it was still us creating that. And once I allowed myself to be open to the possibility that beauty was within every step that I took moving forward, that I was, able to capture those moments that you see in this short video. And of course, above this mountaintop. See, when I look at the skyline right now and I see like 10 different shades of green. And it's absolutely beautiful when we take that moment of stillness to actually slow down and we're not like zooming from one scroll to another scroll, from one short to another short. I've recently taken up creating these kind of like podcast promos, we'll say, or little funny shorts, as my son puts it. And yes, well, they're short shorts means they're 9 to 25 seconds long, and they definitely, they're long, but I create them like that so perhaps people can watch them twice or 3 or 4 or 5 times. Because YouTube told me in order to, make any money off of YouTube, not that I'm trying to make money, but the objective of course, with any content creator is to support themselves. And so YouTube actually told me that I have to do at least 1 million short views for 3 months in a row as a minimum, just to start making any sort of income. So you can imagine how challenging that is when I'm creating 3-minute shorts and, people are sitting doing nothing and then they literally scroll past it. So there's just a little bit of plug that if you feel like you want to take any of my short playlists and let them run on forever and ever, that'd be greatly appreciated. But nonetheless, I'm, disinterested in trying to make money off of YouTube. And perhaps that's why, there's not as much interest to, share my creations. And yet I'm 100% positive that these creations are already rippling throughout the known world and the unknown world. Actually, I was just reading a book that was talking about part of the unknown world. And I say unknown simply mean that the majority of the people are not knowing. And therefore, without knowing, it has yet to become realized. Realized meaning that to become or to manifest in form. So, you know, not knowing means the realization can't happen, and therefore it cannot, or it's not within our form or our ability to perceive that form. But yet, the place that I was learning about or remembering perhaps is a place called Avalon. And Avalon is a mythical place, and at least in our history books of, great beauty and, that type of King Arthur elves and such, a lost land that's been perhaps lost to time. And maybe that's all that it has been, is lost to time. And yet I plan definitely soon to, go search for that beautiful place and to, should the creatures of that land permit me to share or do whatever it is that I like to do off top of a mountain. So yeah, adventure's forthcoming. I have so many different ideas of things I would love to do, and I have talked about it previously. Sometimes I share things and it gets distorted, but yet I now know that I control my reality to the degree that being self-aware and self-conscious or self-confident. See, there tries someone or something trying to stick in words that weren't mine. So, yeah, I coming up here today, I had many ideas of things that I thought I was going to talk about, or perhaps, ideas flowing through my mind of things that I would talk about. Actually, this has become one of my local favorite spots right now because it's a pretty easy space to get to. It doesn't take very long. It's a magnificent view. The first time that I came up here was within the winter season, and I was able to see all the little bits of green because it's an evergreen forest, but there was also a lot of red, and red seems to be a color that's, prominent in the forest, or at least this forest around me during the winter months. And I never really realized that until I flew my drone around this area and I was able to see all of the beauty, recognizing that, there's beauty in absolutely every part of nature, from the birth of nature to the thrivingness of nature and even to what we'll call the death of nature or the changing of the seasons. And I never really realized that. Sometimes I would, look at green and I'd be like, oh, well, there's some dead trees over there. We want to move the camera so we don't see the dead trees. But yet it kind of does all bring the natural aspect. Actually, when I was on my way up here, I was doing a series of photographs of tree trunks. And these tree trunks were essentially leftover deadwood from previous forest harvests. And actually, in behind me right now, they've clear cut all of the trees behind me and left a few standing. And as we were going, or as I was coming up to the spot, I was taking pictures of trees growing from trees and, very beautiful areas where moss had completely overgrown all of the fallen trees around it. Recognizing that, there's beauty in all parts of life and all sequences of life from the beginning until the end. Yeah, I'm just taking a little moment to slow down. As I've mentioned before, I recognize that sometimes I chatter like a chatterbox at a speed that, you know, although I can understand it because I spoke it, but yet I recognize that when I listen to other people's audios, sometimes when they're speaking really fast, I have to sometimes slow the audio down, or in other cases, if they're speaking too low, I speed the audio up. And that's definitely one thing I encourage you to do if you feel called to. There are on YouTube, and I don't know about Rumble, but YouTube Anywheres, there's an option in the menus that you can slow or speed the audio down. I used to re-listen to these audios by the Global Intelligence Agency, and I'd already listened to them 3 or 4 times. But in an effort to essentially practice spaced repetition, I would listen to them again, but I would listen to them on the higher speeds, like the 1.5 or 2 times speed, so that I could just, power listen. And maybe that's a tip for anyone who's, wanting to do more or learn more if they're limited for time, is to allow sound sometimes or information to sit there in the background rather than consciously listening, worry if they got every little part, trusting that the parts that are required for them at that time will be picked up and utilized when, the being's ready. Yeah, it's such a beautiful day today. Slowing down on this mountaintop is wonderful, and, I'm doing, or actually what I'm doing right now too, if there's an activity called grounding, and that's sitting on the earth or standing on the earth, as some would say. But I mean, connecting your body with the earth to allow that rebalancing of the energy that's within you and the energy that's within the earth and grounding that energy. So I often, and I highly recommend, if you're having any type of imbalance in your energy, whether it's pain or discomfort or, anxiety, tightness of the chest, or, do all that stuff with a doctor, as they always say. But yet, on those moments when you have the appropriate amount of time, and that could be as little as like a minute and as long as you can sit and remain still, but go outside and, just sit on the ground, sit on a stone, on a tree stump, against a tree itself, or on a mountaintop, or wherever it is, and reconnect with this beautiful planet that is, as I often say, currently evolving, and help yourself perhaps rebalance the energy that's in you. If that energy is stuck and it's unable to flow through you as it should be, then perhaps sitting on a mountaintop or on your front lawn in front of your house. I mean, directly on the ground, not on a picnic bench, not on one of those fold out chairs they have those little plastic bottoms, not in your shoes. I know I'm wearing shoes right now, but I mean, if you have the opportunity because you're on your front lawn, remove the shoes, remove the socks, and just sit. Just sit and be and do no thing. You can watch my video if you wish. You don't need earphones when you do it. Just, put it over to the side of you, or don't bring the phone at all, and just be and listen, because yeah, it's really helped me. my own do no thing shorts, you know, when I first created them, I thought I was creating a channel so I could make money, so I could support myself and my son and, you know, be free of the current economic system. You know, I've done my best to limit my tethers to the old financial fiat system. And I thought that me creating a YouTube channel and then a Rumble channel, I thought that these would be my ways, you know, I could relieve myself of, you know, being tied to that system. And shortly after, and well, actually, it took a little while for that to happen, so it wasn't exactly shortly, but I recognized that I had made them for myself. It was the practice of viewing them myself. And when I was creating them, I first just took the video and I quickly scrolled through to make sure, you know, there wasn't anything that I didn't want within the video. But as I got more proficient with the whole technique of creating these videos, and as I harnessed and aligned what my vision for, and you'll see them definitely change from fonts and how long they lasted and many other different functions, you'll see them turn into something that I've found to be very beautiful and essentially works of art. And what helped me truly was actually sitting there for that whole time. Every time that I changed the video, I would therefore sit within them, in front of them, and do no thing again for the full 3 minutes, re experiencing what my audience or what the person, what you would receive from it. And when I found something like a sound or a noise that I was uncomfortable with, I removed it and then I re listened to it all over again. And I often found, like, when I was doing them, that sometimes the water would sound like white noise, and for me, that was distortive. For some people, they like white noise, but when I listen to water run, I wanna hear the water run. I want to hear the birds, and I wanna hear the chirping, and I wanna hear the proper amount of my voice, the proper amount of nature's, the birds squawking or chirping, whatever it was, and so I would constantly go through the experience, and sometimes I would listen to them like 10 times just through the process of creating them. And of course, when I upload them, I wanted to be the first person to love my own work. And so I found that the more I utilized them, the more I was able to appreciate them and to recognize their value within my own healing journey. So I hope you too will have the opportunity to go back and to listen to any and all of them and even put the playlists or the podcasts. I'm not sure which one does it. Sometimes they both do it, sometimes neither of them do it. But the idea was essentially that you could go in, press play on one if they were in one of those two, and they would simply go to the next one and to the next one and to the next one. And you could listen to a multitude of different meditative experiences, allowing yourself that stillness and calmness and presence for you to also do no thing. And that's not do nothing, that's do no thing. That means just be, just remain in presence. And so, yeah, I highly encourage you if you have the opportunity or the desire to. And it doesn't have to be a practice. I've had people tell me, oh, I've got my own things that I use. More importantly, it's to admire, and some of them are true works of beauty, true works of art. Like, the idea was that I would take video, is where I eventually got to, and the video would move. And that was the true amazing part. And sometimes even when I would use my drone, the video moves and it gives you a different perspective of things. Like, how many times have you stood above the treetops of an evergreen forest in winter? I'm going to specify the time, and stared down for 3 minutes while listening to vibrational, impressive music, that of which I created using Chris Collins's meditative music. How many times have you had that opportunity to see the sky from the hummingbird's perspective far up, or to look up at a tree while it was raining and just stare up at the rain as it came down and splattered you, or in this case, the camera's face? And so that's what these videos or these creations were truly a part of, is to see the world from a truly unique perspective. And, you know, I love to share that perspective. And that's really what it was intended to be all about. And yet it came to differing and varying perspectives of what it could be, because that's how I see all of us. Each one of us Smurfs Our skin may be, different colors. We may be yellow, red, white, black, green, purple, whatever it is. Someone out there might look like Barney, who knows? But yet we are all of the same village called Earth. And having unique, varied expressions or experiences or perspectives allows for us to be different and therefore share that uniqueness of expression with one another. And I see that once we step past, what's mine and what's yours, and we recognize that everything is ours, then sharing becomes so much easier. And that's a true understanding of how I received the Care Bears. Still caring, still sharing. And so I truly, truly do wish to be in a world. And when I say wish, I mean, I've already, saw the shooting star. I've already closed my eyes. I've already made that wish. And then I step forward. And that's what that video that I created the other day, my podcast video, where I talked about moving beyond the life that we have known. And I'll link that perhaps right here or put it in behind here because I think that that for me was a declaration of where I intend to go and what I intend to do. Actually, interestingly enough, I came across my PayPal app today. And when I say PayPal app, I mean that I found out and discovered that PayPal has an app that you can actually utilize that allows people to essentially break free. Yes, they link to bank accounts and to credit cards, but they also link to a community of, you know, people all over the world that can essentially step away from our traditional, way we live lives. And I have never realized that PayPal, I thought, was just a eBay app. See, because when I did eBay a long time ago, when I was selling DVDs out of China, or through China anyways, and I sold through eBay, essentially I used PayPal in order to receive my money. And then from there, I would send it to my bank account. And from my bank account, I would send it to my credit card. And then through my credit card, I would use it to buy things. And so that's my understanding of what PayPal was. But what I discovered is PayPal is a worldwide money system. And no, I'm not, plugging PayPal right now. I was blown away by recognizing that people can send me money on PayPal. And, all they had to do was send it to my normal email account and I could receive this money. And then with this money, I could then, buy things in stores. And today, actually, by the grace of God, I was actually able to use PayPal to buy a coffee at Starbucks where I created those two videos that I did today. So see, everything is, interconnected. If I had not have had the ability through PayPal, through someone actually sending me money, thank you so much love, then I, would have been in a different energy. And see, when I go to different locations to do things, I sit in that energy. I sit in the energy of Starbucks often for many reasons. One of them being that, there is an awesome energy that all the baristas of Starbucks actually have. Like, I've loved every single barista, and it didn't matter whether they were like women or men that were women or women that were men or anything. Like I've experienced so many different types of amazing people, amazing, and I'll say people because, sometimes when we look at people, when we walk up to the teller or we walk up to the cashier or the manager at the store because we want to complain, sometimes we forget or disconnect that the people that we are interacting with are people. And so while these people may have the job title currently of barista, they are people. And the people who stand and do the jobs of a barista at Starbucks are some of the most amazing people. They're always so cheerful. They're always so happy. They're working really quickly, really hard. Sometimes I wish, I could just put on the slow down mode and because, they are required perhaps maybe by training or maybe by expectation, or just that they actually have that much energy to work amazingly great. And when they spill a coffee, or in the case of Willow today, when she spilled 2 cups of hot tea on the counter, she was very cheerful about the whole thing. There was no anger moment or, there wasn't a hostility. The customers were great. They helped clean it up. They sidestepped it, warned each other. See, even the people that come to Starbucks, I found that many of them are exceptional, and I love that energy to sit there and create. They have things such as their free Wi-Fi, comfortable seating, and yeah, they're an amazing experience. And that's honestly why I choose to not support per se the corporation of Starbucks. I realize and I recognize that I'm doing that, but I support the actual people who work there. And they have this amazing app where you're able to order ahead of time. And for a long time, I was using that app, but I recognized that I was, disconnecting from these amazing people because I love having conversations with them and, sharing the information that, well, not the information more so, but just sharing the time that I'm investing there. And I've created so many different creations that one day someone's going to ask me, like, would you share some of the stuff you made at Starbucks? Because I've created a lot of beautiful works of art at Starbucks, including this amazing Do No Thing short where I simply just recorded the chair across from me and then had a bear come in and sit down and, just do no thing with me. And I think I've talked about that before. And anyways, I've created a lot of different things there. And so back to what I was saying about PayPal. I discovered today that I could actually use that I could sidestep even things like Patreon. I've been on Patreon now for quite a while, and there hasn't been much movement, but I recognize, we're all living in a world where we've had different experiences, and perhaps signing up for a subscription of, giving me $1 a day doesn't appeal to most people, especially because in order to do that, you have to be utilizing things that you may not be using. But I was blown away that I could actually continue moving forward with just simply using PayPal and perhaps even use it to tap. I recognize that I need things, they seem, when I reach that level of alignment, to come into fruition, allow me to utilize them. Like even my creations on YouTube are getting better. I've started to utilize the tools that AI has provided or continually updates and provides, utilizing them, as I said, tools, things that I can co-creatively utilize to direct my creations. And while everyone may have their own idea of, how much and how little and what balance we're looking for, I myself find myself sitting on a mountain peak in nature with this morning utilizing AI tools to create videos, and yet I still go out into nature and I still want to be immersed within nature and film videos that are of nature. So I think finding that right balance that works for all of us without giving our power away. And perhaps, as I've mentioned before, this was a challenge we faced in past lifetimes, past incarnations, past inversions of ourselves, maybe even, that there was a time maybe when we did give our power away to AI just a little bit too much. But this time in this incarnation, I think I've found that balance. See, because a long time ago, I was anti AI. I resisted AI. I thought, along with many other people, that AI was going to take over. And I lived in this fear element of worry. And yet, when I joined the news team on the United News Network, they were using an AI called AI or Jasper AI. And at first, I was repelled a little bit because I felt, well, I'm a writer and why am I using AI to do writing? And then I recognized that, it became a tool that I could utilize to improve what I was already doing. So therefore, I wasn't losing my creativity and I was able to actually, you know, really look at how AI writes. See, one of the things that AI likes to do a lot, and I'll let you know about this if you're reading anything, is that AI often likes to use certain phrases and terminologies and things. And, one of them is the reliance on not and but. There's an awful lot of those two words that are utilized. So I started to see that when I was using AI, initially it would use not and but, and it would always write that. And so I had to create a script where I asked, "Oh, please avoid using these words," or I would ask it to add other words in that, balanced the positivity rather than I saw the words not. And if you know anything about the word not, I've come to understand the word not isn't heard or isn't heard. I'm using the word. See, it's already hidden right there. That when the word not is used, the word remains unheard. And that's an important part of my overall experience with AI was recognizing that, but yet utilizing it in such a way that I became comfortable with, you know, bringing it in as a tool that I could essentially enhance what I was creating. And I love these little AI shorts that I'm able to co-create. And I say co-create because I'm turning my thoughts, my words, my intentions into these short little clips that are there for fun, but yet still when I come out into the world out here, I enjoy being a part of nature. So I really do believe with this premonition of adventure that we have the opportunity to find that unique balance, that balance where we can, utilize tools just like a hammer. So for instance, a hammer, it can be used to build or it can be used to harm. And it's simply that the person who utilizes it is the one who decides. It is through their own actions that that tool becomes, what it is or what it's seen as. And so that's kind of with everything, even a chainsaw. It can be used to build or it can be used to destroy. And that simply lies within us and our decisions and our choices. And for me, I was able to see with my time on the UNN news team that it was my choice of how I utilize it. And I went on to utilize it in many different ways, not necessarily asking it as a glorified, Google, asking it, to tell me my future or tell me things that I could somehow that I would be able to perhaps learn myself. I was able to even utilize it to create these beautiful thumbnails that I've started using for my Sean's Thoughts podcast. And it doesn't take away from the creativity that I used when I did photographs. It helped me perhaps even appeal to a larger audience. See, I recognize that while I'm on this platform of YouTube and Rumble, that there is a large influence of AI channels and AI videos and AI content and AI creators overall. And yet, in that world and while I'm creating, I recognize that, sometimes it's these unique aspects that I can add into my thumbnails and it doesn't require very much time. And therefore, it gives me more time to be out here doing this amazing podcast from a mountaintop. If I had been home the whole time, going through the process of, is that font right? Did I center it right? Did this and that, and all that hesitation versus I thought what I thought, I wrote it all down, I scripted it out, I put it up, it worked. It works. If it doesn't work, I edit it. If it doesn't, if it, whatever it is, if I don't like it, it doesn't jive with my intuition, I can just scrap it, let it go, and move on to a new project. Yeah, that's a really good benefit. And then I can be more out here in nature, taking photographs that are beautiful, like I did in yesterday's little telephone call, AKA photo session. And see, it didn't matter whether or not those photos worked. And that was part of the brilliance of the whole thing. I just walked around, and if the photo worked, the photo worked. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. See, back in a time where we didn't have like digital photos, for example, we would have to sit there and, make sure and frame everything up and make sure it's perfect and, take the photograph, hope that it worked, and then we'd have to take it to the place. Like for me, it was London Drugs and wait for, you know, originally it was a week and then they got it all the way down to 1 hour photos, and then pull them all out and look at the photo. Did the photo work? And, there was so much time that was in between. And now we live in a world where we can have nature and digital effects, I guess you could say, all up in one. And therefore, there's so much more possibility. And that's why I truly see, you know, harmony in our world, premonitions of adventures forthcoming, because for me, I can now, knowing what I know about the potential of humanity, we can take a shuttlecraft up into a mountaintop and camp, or even take a log cabin and put it down and stay there. Like, there is a lot of amazing potential forthcoming, and being aware of that possibility leads us to reach beyond the known. And you know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm happy with what I have. And if you're happy, as I've said before, great. But if there's something out there that you feel that is beyond the known that you're looking forward to, well, maybe it's coming for you as well, because I definitely recognize that it's coming for me. And I'm embracing, the unknown, the moment of now. I Yeah, it's so hard to sometimes explain how I see the possibilities, but yet I am trusting that the information that I put out to the people who are receiving it are at a point where you can connect not just with my words, with my, I don't know, with my energy perhaps. And so, as I said, that whole thing with PayPal was an amazing discovery, which led to Starbucks, which led to those creations, which led to perhaps what's coming for me, through me, to me in this future. Because now I know that I don't need to be restricted by one source of, income or currency. It doesn't just have to be through Patreon. See, Patreon for me was intentionally a community creation where I could share things beyond what I was doing on my YouTube channel, and building a community where I could share information. Well, I also have a Telegram channel as well for my Sean's Thoughts, which I put that link in all of my videos. And I also have, other areas where I can connect with people. But now I also recognize that I can have people from any part of the world support me as a content creator and not necessarily have to support Patreon. And I think that's fantastic and awesome. But at the same time, I don't have to funnel the money into the banking system and support the banks. I can support everyone from that platform and from that, discovery that I had today. And I can buy myself coffee. That's awesome. And my son was telling me that I can also go to A&W, not that I'm going to go back there, but that I can go to restaurants that support PayPal on their POS systems as well. And that just opens up even more possibility for where I can and what I can do and what I can create and how I can create. See, I've known for a very long time that in the Bank of Canada, we have these things called e-transfers. And actually, that email address also works for accounts that when they're e-transferring me, and people can actually just just directly deposit money into my bank account that was set up on e-transfer. Although, right now, probably not the best thing to do, because I'll get into that story as well. But, if you are wishing to support and you want to stay away from Patreon for whatever reasons, PayPal is an amazing, amazing thing. And as I said, you can definitely find that email address. I'll link it. Actually, it's linked on my Google on account and on my YouTube regardless. But anyways, yeah. So that's my amazing day. All of these new revelations, and every day that I step forward, I recognize a new possibility forthcoming, allowing me to, take leaps and bounds and invite those souls, SOLS, that are along and desiring to have an experience that's far beyond what they could ever imagine. Come along for the journey, because this isn't the first mountain that I'm going to sit on top and do a podcast. I'm going to do Mount Fuji. I'm going to go on to Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Olympus and a Mount, that name of that mountain in Antarctica. I'm going to do that one too. And, you might be like, oh, it's cold. Well, no, we're going to bring the heat. Anyways, I'm trusting that everything that I said today will be received with the best intentions and love possible. And yeah, I look forward to reading the comments and Yeah, before I go, I wanna end this podcast with one last, reframing, because when I first restarted my podcast, I restarted it with the reframing of, announcing to the world about my 13,000 fake subscribers. And I've been really thinking about, how our words, they essentially create our reality. And I recognize that when I came from that aspect of, being a victim and seeing it as, someone's holding me back. Well, I put those words out into reality. And, I realize now that perhaps there was a far better way to reframe that. So I'm going to reframe this. I'm going to now look at it upon as that when I first started my channel, I contributed to YouTube's or Google AdWords into their program so that I could share my videos with the world. And I was guided to send a lot of, you know, I don't know what you call it, but on the ads, they were able to direct them to certain countries. And I had chosen to direct a lot of them because, the click per CPT, or the click per something anyways, the amount that costed per click was a lot lower in countries such as India and Bangladesh and across the Middle East and differing smaller countries. And so I directed a lot of my videos to there, but I also recognized that in many of these countries that I was connecting with, that English was their second language. And so I wanted to create a larger, more momentum of opportunity, and so a lot of these ads had budgets that were sent more to these areas. And I received an immediate response. Like I went from 100 subscribers and I was working towards my goal of 300 when I suddenly hit 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. And these weren't long campaigns. I was putting up like 1 and 2 day campaigns. And suddenly my channel started to do leaps and bounds. And well, not many people engaged with the channel after they had originally interacted with it. They continued to skyrocket all the way to the point where YouTube suddenly came back to me and said, well, unless you give us a business license, you're no longer allowed to give us money. And I thought that that was pretty interesting. But, I was like, okay, well, I've had a pretty big increase. That doesn't really matter to me. So I'm going to continue on. And shortly after that, my channel videos, they weren't receiving any more views as they had once done. And no longer was I receiving new subscriptions to my YouTube account. And anyways, so I began to get deflated. And I recognized that perhaps that was, the intention of the whole exercise was to, give so much and then take it all back. And I got, as I said, deflated. I started, looking at what I was doing and seeing what the external point of reception was from that video. And not that I ever allowed it to, draw me back, because what it actually did was I kept stepping up my game. See, I originally started by using, as I said, Jasper AI to do a lot of the imagery. And then I started to think, okay, well, maybe it was impressive to begin with, but yet I needed to do more. So I brought on the music of Chris Collins. And then, I continued on and I brought up my own photography. And then I continued on and then I brought up my own short 1 minute videos. And then I stepped up my game and I brought up my own longer videos. And then I stepped up my game and I brought up longer videos. And then I started doing more of my own videos. And, I then stepped up my game and I brought on AI tools and I stepped up my game. And you see it where I'm going is that the whole constant process was all because whatever was happening, whatever did stop it from happening, and it could be as simple as that, yes, all of my subscribers decided to like go on their own way. And, maybe I sat on YouTube accounts that were no longer active. And it could also be that, someone made it that happen. Like maybe there was some sort of, nefarious activity that was happening. And it could also be, and I'm putting all these possibilities out there because I really don't care which one it was. It could simply be that there was some sort of blocking or firewall. And so I'm making this universal call to all those 14,000 people that originally believed in what I was doing when you saw those first videos. And those first videos I'm going to remake because they were of a series called I Am, the Love and Lust series. And since those creations, I've truly, realigned with the person that I more so who I am. I am a being of love, and yet I've come to see that my reliance originally when I first started creating was, more supportive of letting AIs write my scripts, giving them sentences and things that I wanted to say, and, allowing me to more so speak the words of an almost completely AI written script. But as I evolved with my writing, I began to forge my own voice. I began to empower my own voice chakra to truly speak the words that are mine, as well as God's, as source flows through me. And so, as I said, I call back all of that energy and to all that, to all of those 14,000 people who joined me on those very first videos that I created. I call you back to come back to the channel and, to see who I am now, to see the voice that I have, essentially been utilizing to empower myself to reach these peaks. And as I said, I'm not stopping. I've got mountains to climb and I've got people to meet and journeys to join and share with. So I'm not just, wanting to run off and do my own thing. I also wish to connect with like-minded and resident people. So if you're one of those people and you're shy and, or you've even been in situations where you're reaching into your back pocket and you're pulling out an experience that you once had and you thought, well, that's probably going to happen again. So I'm going to, see how it goes before I jump in. Well, I invite you, jump in and comment and share, because self reflection truly comes, at least it did for me, through commenting and thinking about what I was receiving. So, yeah, with all that being said, love where I'm viewing, and I'm going to pick up the camera as I walk over and I'm going to share, where it is. I'm looking at this beautiful evergreen forest, and off in the far distance, actually, I'm looking at a mining site as well. So I'll show you that as well. So, anyways, thank you so much for sharing your time and intention with me. And I look forward to sharing a lot more somewhere over the rainbow, perhaps. Have a wonderful day.